College football season is here, and Underdog Fantasy has the perfect deal to get you in the game. Use the code WALKON to grab up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick on all the college football action. Whether you're riding with your alma mater or making bold predictions, this is your chance to win big all season long. Don't miss out. Use code WALKON, that's WALKON, to get started today.
And now it's First and Goal with your host, Big Bear and the Curtain Guy.
Week 1 is in the books, everybody. The good, the bad, the ugly, the heartthrob, the heartache, and the heartburn. Welcome back, everybody. This is First and Goal. We are your hosts. I'm Big Bear T. Tyler Urbanski.
I'm the Curtain Guy, Cole Schutte.
Week 1 on paper was filled with cupcakes, but inside those cupcakes were obviously a bunch of razor blades. Several Big Ten teams were struggling out of the gate against their mid-level opponents, including some games where they were decided by a possession or two. Overall, the conference opens up with a 17-1 record, just a few feet away from being perfect due to that missed game-winning field goal by Minnesota on Thursday night. A special shout out to our longtime listeners of the show and a wonderful welcome to our newest listeners. The Goal Line Guardians have seen a remarkable uptick these last few weeks. And if you have enjoyed watching, listening to our show thus far, we highly recommend following and subscribing so you stay updated whenever our newest episodes drop. Before we get things started tonight, I kind of want to drop this challenge to all of you watching and listening at home. If you have friends or family that enjoy Big Ten football as much as you do, as we do, share the show with them as well. Copy our Spotify link, our YouTube post. We'd love to interact with more of you guys at home. After each episode, you can even leave your questions below for a chance that we review them on future episodes. So exciting things as the season gets going. We're happy it's underway. Finally, months of waiting have caught up. We're going to go into our listener question of the week. We have a question that came in from Dylan. Dylan asked, when do we start taking USC seriously as a playoff contender? So, Cole, I'll ask you, what do you think of Dylan's question here? Do you think it's time to take USC seriously?
Just as we try to not overreact to some of the struggles that some of these Big Ten teams had in their openers, we're going to do our best to not overreact to the success either, right? We're officially 2 weeks into this. And so I'm not going to try and get ahead of ourselves either way, because much like the model, we're going to need a little more data to kind of see where these teams are actually headed. Now I want to give the Trojans their flowers, right? Because it was a hard fought, well-earned victory on Sunday night. A lot of good things to look forward to. A lot to be excited about if you're a fan of USC. But to answer Dylan's question, my answer would be if the Trojans can walk out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, sitting at 3-0 with 2 wins over top 15 teams to start the season, then I think it would be pretty fair to seriously consider the men of Troy a contender. But until then, let's pump the brakes on the hype train.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I'm at too, Cole. Utah State's a nice matchup to recover after that grueling LSU game. With Michigan being one of our preseason college football playoff contenders, I think it's fair to say if USC can go to Michigan and pull off that win, they could probably replace them in that Big Ten top 4 in our eyes. So, Dylan, thank you for that question. Again, anybody else looking to have us review their questions on the show, make sure to comment them below on the YouTube video or even the Spotify app for a chance that we could pick yours next week. So we love it. Appreciate having those questions.
Hey, guys. Hey, before we get into it, I wanted to make a quick comment. There were some very questionable moments from week 1 that I really wanted to address, and I know the listeners probably know what I'm talking about. If you guys don't mind, I just got a few things I want to say. Yeah. So I'm going to kick things off with the Clemson game. We got things kicked off with former wide receiver Roddy White who decided to drop some wisdom this week. There was an issue that came up where he said that the Clemson team had too many white dudes. Roddy, what are you doing, man? Why are you saying that? What game are you watching? Last time I checked, talent didn't come from a skin color. You're over here counting skin tones while the rest of us are counting points. Maybe focus less on what the team's doing on the field and a little more about what they're doing and a little less about the color of their skin. It's not exactly raising your IQ level on the football field. For those that watched the Western Michigan game, you noticed that there was a minor bloop versus Wisconsin. It was a wild 26-yard field goal run, but the kicker, Palmer Domschke, got stopped just short of the end zone. They did manage to score later, but the kicker literally had to make the score. But after Wisconsin scored on the 2-point conversion, one of the players, Naquan Washington, randomly jumped over the ref. Like, come on, man. What was that? Dude thought he was in the Olympics for a second. Just random funny moments that, that I noticed. Weren't quite Big Ten, but, as college football fans, we stop and we scratch our heads wondering, where the hell were you at?
I didn't happen to catch that Wisconsin one, but did he get penalized on that play? I think
the referee was just more confused than anything. I mean, considering you got this big ass guy just jumping over this referee, and he's just kind of like, whatever, play on.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Most sports that turns into think of basketball, that turns into a technical. You even touch the ref nowadays. So surprised they let that play, but interesting nonetheless. Crazy choices, which, okay, now we're going to kind of shift towards that week one Jeff was just talking about, because everybody loves to look back at the good, the bad, the ugly, and we all overreact. And I guess I'll be culprit number one because I have a overreaction for you. For some of our listeners at home, obviously, much like myself, we had to endure that less than stellar performance by the Oregon Ducks on Saturday night. Call it what it is. I went to that game against Idaho, and as I so wrongly called you all the potatoes, I was expecting to see that nice early season showcase of this new Oregon offense. And then after seeing earlier games against Ohio State, Iowa, Indiana, where they kind of struggled to get things going offensively, at least in the first half, I somewhat expected that to be the case. Defense was solid as it could be. They created 2 turnovers. They were holding Idaho to 200 yards, allowed 14 points, which both came off trick plays. I thought that was the worst of it, right? No, I think this is where it really turns gloomy in my overreaction. Offensive showing was much more lackluster in my eyes. A slew of penalties from illegal formation and holding, a battered offensive line that we've mentioned before, where your most veteran presence in a Johnny Cornelius was just getting straight up cooked on the right side. Dylan Gabriel threw the ball 49 times, which is never more than 25 yards. And why do you need to throw the ball 50 times a game? I'll move on. The team lacked explosive plays, to say the least, and it lacked pizzazz. And so my overreaction after week one is this offensive line is going to cost Oregon games. So I sit back, I look at that, and this is why overreactions are too much. Everybody, look, while in the short term, this may be a worry, I think the long-term outlook is much better for the Ducks. They're going to be getting guys like offensive guard Matthew Bedford back, which then allows them to shift Iapani Laulu back to his natural spot at center. It gets a walk-on off the starting rotation and kind of shores up that interior of the line. So while I think this Oregon team really had an issue in week one, trying to find consistency, move the ball, get the running game going, I think we're going to see a completely different Oregon team here in week two. And I say that more in a pleading aspect because I don't know what I'm going to do if they don't turn it around. I guess if that's the case and we see the same thing as week one, there might be a reason to panic, but let's hold off.
Yeah. Big Bear, I think that was shocking for a lot of people because you and I were texting about that. And I felt similar, at least in the first half. And I know many people in Buckeye Nation did. But Ohio State was working with similar issues, right? Donovan Jackson was out at that left guard position. You had Austin Severfeld in there. Cody Simon was out at linebacker, and you kind of really noticed how much of a difference he makes. Now, those two players probably will not be back for Western Michigan, nor that they need to. And after a 35-3 second half, I think a lot of us had calmed down, even though some of us came up 3 points short of our parlay hitting that would have won a lot of money. But, that's betting, right, Jeff? So instead, I'm going to take my overreaction outside of the Big Ten as well. And I'm going to go to the performance of Cam Ward and the Miami Hurricanes against the Florida Gators, right? And man, did they make a statement. Now, I know the Gators weren't anticipated to be anything special this season, but Mario Cristobal's squad handled business better than some of the other teams across the country who were playing much inferior opponents. So I have to give them their props on a 41-17 drubbing, in which Miami never trailed, and that certainly caught my attention. We had a couple of TVs going at the bachelor party that I was at, and that was one of the games that everybody kind of kept turning to and being like, damn, really? Another score? So the Hurricanes look to be a legitimate squad, and I think they will be a team that competes with Clemson for the top of the ACC in that crown this year, after Florida State has apparently just decided to take the season off because that has looked just awful in 2 weeks, and I am terrified for what the answers could be on their end. But I don't think that Miami is really challenged until their match with Louisville in the middle of October, so we won't really know if they're for real or not. They never match up with Clemson unless it would be in that ACC title game. But nonetheless, I'll be keeping an eye on Miami the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think this is a good season for them to put up or show up, because a lot of people were really curious on what Mario Cristobal's tenure was going to be like there if they didn't start to turn that around. And it looks like they've got the pieces to do it. So I'll be excited to see what Miami does as well. Kind of before we jump into the marquee games this week, I wanted to bring up the big board, everybody. We kind of shifted the point scale now for goal line stand again, and we're going to go through those metrics again. We made it a little better because we ran into a couple of questions in week one, and I think that we needed an answer to those. So let's kind of look at that again. So same as before, we're going to pick the Big Ten games, and if you get that pick right, it's 1 point. There's going to be at least one game a week that we're going to pick an upset. And if you get that upset pick right, that's 2 points. The other two pieces we added, and I want to explain this a little bit so those of you at home understand these. We're going to do a prop bet, okay? 3 points max for this. So, for example, we're just going to throw out an example. Let's just say that if Will Howard throws the ball for 300 yards this week, that's 300, or that's 3 points if that hits. If it's within 25% of that total, you're going to get 2 points. So guys, keep track of that. The last one that we added was the goal line stand. This is the bold pick of the week. We'll go over that towards the end of the show. That has the potential to give you 4 points. And for example, on that one, if Ohio State scores 55 plus, that's our bold pick. Yeah, that one hits. There's 4 points. So those are some examples. We'll give ours in a little bit. Wanted to go through that. Giving you an update on the standings after week one. It's a relatively close one. Surprisingly, but not surprising. The model is in first place at 17 points. I am in second place at 16. Curtin Guy with 15. Jeff, you were there at 13. Jeff went a little bit with the upsets there in week one. So, well, let's see. He's going to probably turn it around here in the upcoming weeks, but I like living on the risky side, right there, Jeff. So let's turn to what is considered the game of the week, and we are talking about Texas at Michigan. We're going to kind of dive into this one. This is where Big Noon Kickoff's going to be. I believe game day is there as well. So this is obviously on everybody's radar. Kicks off at it's a noon banger if I'm not mistaken. But so let's dive into that matchup. Cole, I'm going to turn to you first. Talk to us about what Texas and Michigan bring to the table and what people need to be looking for in this matchup.
Yeah, this is the one that we alluded to last week, a couple weeks before that. right? This is kind of the one that everybody had circled on their calendars to get this season really kicked off. You mentioned it. Game day is going to be there. Big noon kickoff. It's going to be a hell of a showdown. But you're talking about two teams coming off some very different week one performances. The Longhorns came out and flat out bullied Colorado State in their opener. They demolished the Rams 52-0. They only held them to 74 yards passing, 192 yards overall, forced 2 turnovers. Quinn Ewers looked like he just kind of picked up where he left off in 2023, going 20 for 27 for 216 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. Arch Manning got to come in and got some touchdowns. It was, kind of that opener that you look for when you are a top 10, top 5 type of team, right? You get out healthy, you obliterate the opponent, you get those backups in, get them experience. And then on the other hand, Michigan kind of found itself in one of those closer than I would really like this to be games deep into the fourth quarter. It was 16-10 at one point in the fourth. And thanks to a 18-yard touchdown catch from Colston Lovin and an 86-yard interception return for a touchdown by Will Johnson, that was what kind of put it away for the Wolverines. The defense was as advertised, right? They held Fresno State to 9 yards rushing. They forced 2 turnovers and they limited explosive plays. But the offense left a lot to be desired, right? Not a lot of explosive rushing plays. They kind of tried to flip in and out of the quarterbacks, and neither of them really looked like they could find rhythm or consistent success pushing the ball down the field. Big Bear, I know something that you pointed out was that Loveland really seems to be their only threat in terms of the passing game. But I think you're going to get strength on strength with this. The Texas offense against the Michigan defense. And, when you look at it as a totality, it's going to be exciting, right? It's one of those games that this is why we tune into college football. So I'm ready to watch this one play out in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, I think Michigan, very similar to what I was talking about with Oregon. It's like offense, it was there, but it wasn't quite what you expected. And I think even worse for Michigan is they weren't really putting up the yards in the spots where you'd expect them to. Rushing the ball was just not the same. So I think when I look at keys to this game, for me, it's going to be whether or not that Michigan offense can produce to stay in the game. The odds makers have this over under at 42, and meaning not 42, it might be 20. No, 42. Yeah. So they're expecting it to be more or less of like a rock fight. From what we saw from Michigan last week, I have trouble imagining the passing game is going to be able to surpass like 150 yards. They were closer to 125 against Fresno State. And it was very apparent, like you said, Cole, Colston Loveland was the lead producer. He was half of the receptions for those quarterbacks. So it's very, very certain that they are keying in on him as their producer. You have Morris Jr. still there, but that just didn't feel like they were using the receiving core at a higher multitude than just those 2 players. So I think that's scary for Michigan fans. I think if Texas decides to like double team him up, maybe put a linebacker on him and kind of keep him in check, and then you force guys like Davis Warren and Alex Orji to beat you with their arms, I think that's going to spell serious trouble for Michigan, because much like people said in years past, they wanted JJ McCarthy to beat them with their arms. Well, that didn't work out too well for them in some cases, but they also had the run game to show for it. And if Michigan can't get the run game going and you can't get the quarterback to produce, you don't really have an offense. And I think Texas pulls it away in that circumstance. So kind of looking at X factors for this game, who would you highlight, one player from each team, Cole, who you think is going to be a game changer in this one?
I have to go with, I guess, what are the obvious choices here with Quinn Ewers and Donovan Edwards. I think the Wolverine defense will find equal success and be challenged by a more explosive and balanced offense than they have seen since, I guess, the national championship of last year. So obviously 2 completely different teams. But, this is going to be their first real test of equal talent across the board, and a team that is able to probably find a little bit more success on the ground than what Fresno State was able to. And so I want to see how that offense responds for the Wolverines. Can Donovan Edwards become the running back that they need him to be, right? It doesn't need to be, a bunch of 50-yard touchdown runs. It just needs to be, can he get 4 or 5 yards a carry? Can they control the clock? Can they keep the Texas offense off the field, keep their defense off the field as well, and keep them healthy so that they can attack? And then, for Ewers, can he push the ball downfield? Can he challenge this talented back seven for the Wolverines? Can he avoid the pressure that's going to be generated by this talented defensive line? And can he get Texas into scoring opportunities? I'm not saying that he even needs to score touchdowns. I think that if they can get maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns and a couple of field goals, I think that might be enough for Texas to walk out of here with a victory the way that the Michigan offense has been playing. So those are the 2 guys that I'm really looking at, because I think those are going to kind of make those respective teams go.
Yeah. And I think when I was keying in on this, when I was making my prediction, was very much that Michigan offense. It was such a contrast from last year to me that it was hard to not focus in on it. We know the defense is going to be decent, but like you said, if Texas has enough opportunities to put points up, then you're more or less playing catch up. And is Michigan going to be able to keep up for all 4 quarters? I think that's where the biggest trouble comes in. So let's turn and give our picks here. Cole, I'll kind of let you start us off with your pick. Who do you think is going to win this one, and what do you think that score might be?
I kind of have gone back and forth in this, but I just can't get over the fact of how herky-jerky and inconsistent the Michigan offense was. I think the defense is phenomenal. I have said that leading up in every preview that we've done, but I was really expecting more from the offense. I wasn't expecting them to be a top 10 unit in the country, but I was looking for something more consistent, especially on the ground game. And while Texas is not the greatest rush defense, they're probably top 15 in the country. They're probably just good enough to make Michigan one-dimensional. And if they can get a couple of early scores and kind of put that onus and that responsibility for the game on that Michigan quarterback, I think the Wolverines are going to find themselves in trouble. That being said, I think it does end up being more or less a rock fight. I just think that Texas has a few more playmakers on offense that allow them to put a few more points on the board. So I think you're looking at a 23-20 type of game in favor of the Longhorns.
You actually have it a little closer than I do. I am also taking Texas, but I don't see that Michigan offense being able to produce to even, I hate to say it, but score 20 points. I think 17 might even be a generous mark. And that's where I'll put them. I'll say Texas pulls this one out 24-17. Longhorns take that victory. And then the model, last of all, we'll put this one in here. The model is also coming up with Texas. This was very split to start the season, but after last week, it kind of favored Texas a little bit higher. So we have Longhorns across the board. Jeff, if you had to pick in this matchup, who are you taking?
Yeah, you guys hit a lot of the key points here. I'm also going to take Texas. I think it'll be a little bit more scoring. I think Texas does cover that spread at 7.5. I have Texas 34, Michigan 24. It's going to be a crazy day in the big house. That's for sure.
We're going to move from the big noon game day style game of the week to what some people consider in Boulder, Colorado to be every week's Super Bowl. We have Colorado at Nebraska. This Nebraska team's been pretty different, guys. I'm surprised to know what to expect out of their defense, I guess, when they go up against Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter, but Dylan Raiola is about as good as advertised, and all the highlights we've seen of him seem to fit pretty well. So, quick background on this series. Nebraska leads the overall series with Colorado 49-21 with 2 ties. Colorado enters this game with a 3-game winning streak over the Huskers, and Colorado in their last 6 meetings has scored an average of 28 points a game. Now, I'll kind of direct you because today on our YouTube channel on the Walk On Red Shirts, we posted the EA college football simulation for week 2 between Colorado and Nebraska. And without giving any spoilers, you might see something similar with that outcome. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So feel free to go over to our YouTube Walk On Red Shirts page. Check that out. We do have that posted as well. I kind of want to briefly talk about, I know we didn't put this in the script, guys, but when we compare these two coaches, we got Deion Sanders and Matt Rule. What do you think is the main difference between these two, or even the similarities? Like, what do these two guys do well that I guess stands out in this matchup as, I guess, keys to their game plan? Any thoughts on that there, guys?
I would say if there's one similarity between the two, they're both very adept at collecting talent and kind of building up their rosters in that manner, especially from places that maybe aren't used to having that type of talent threshold on a team. Colorado's obviously, well, both programs really have found success in the past and then kind of fallen off, and these two coaches have breathed new life into it, and they've done it in very vastly different ways, I think. But they have collected a lot of talent in the last couple of years, and that's why this is one of those games that a lot more people are going to be, keeping their eyeballs on, because, they know these teams aren't just two dog shit programs anymore. When you talk about maybe the differences, I think it's pretty obvious, I guess, is what I'm going to say. Deion is definitely a little more flashy and a little more upfront in your face about how he does it. And Matt Rule is very much a grinder from what I've read about him and how he goes about his business. Now, he's not afraid to say things at media day or make, jabs at people. He's made that quite apparent as well since he joined the Pig Den. But those are the two, or the differences and similarities, I would say, just kind of looking at a 30,000 foot view from them.
No, I like that. Motivating coaches in their own way. And I think that both these offenses kind of have a pass heavy attack. Looking at X factors for this game, Colorado, I feel like you have to pick Shedeur Sanders, right? I mean, 445 of Colorado's 504 total offensive yards came passing the ball last week. Dalen Hayden, the Ohio State transfer, was more or less invisible against North Dakota State. And I think Nebraska is going to have him contained just about the same. So getting Shedeur locked in early and often is going to be what keeps Colorado in this fight for the long haul. And then for Nebraska, it's really hard not to pick Dylan Raiola. I mean, when you look at those two quarterbacks, to say that one of them's a true freshman, and you could easily see both of them being NFL style quarterbacks right now, like that's high praise for an 18, 19-year-old kid. But I'm going to go a little different route with Nebraska. I'm going to highlight Isaiah Nair, the wide receiver. This should be an interesting matchup because I'm more than certain he's going to be matched up with Travis Hunter. Nair's proving himself to be Raiola's top target in the passing game, and I think it has potential to make or break a game. I mean, he had over 100 yards in week 1. I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again in week 2. So those are two guys that are very important to watch. Keys to this game, though, Colorado, when you look at maybe needing to execute and control the game, looking at that part, Colorado needs to keep the ball in the hands of that offense. In week 1, North Dakota State controlled time possession by 13 more minutes than Colorado. And we obviously saw, if you watched football last week, how that game played out. It came down to a couple of yards difference on that Hail Mary from making or breaking that game for Colorado. We know that offense can have success, but if they score too quickly, it creates more opportunities for Raiola and the Huskers run game to wear down that defense over the course of 4 quarters. Now, we talked about Gabe Ervin. We've talked about Dante Dowdell. Dowdell got a heavier dose of the ball in week 1. He was used really well. I mean, exactly what coaches were talking about him in camp seemed to come true with his downhill running. I think that they're going to continue to stick to that game plan because the more you run the ball, the more you open up the pass. So Nebraska, I think, kind of like a polar opposite from Colorado, because they controlled the clock 38 minutes to 21 minutes in their week 1 win against UTEP, and they capitalized on a big second quarter to kind of pull things away. So I think the biggest path to victory is winning that turnover battle for Nebraska, being able to, on defense, to get that ball back to your offense, because one, it keeps it out of the hands of Shedeur Sanders, who we saw late in the game can make a play or get a penalty to make a game. But it's also, fair to say that UTEP's sole touchdown against the Huskers came off the backs of a turnover on downs and a streak of 3 straight failed possessions. So Colorado is not UTEP offensively, and punting the ball back to Shedeur Sanders opens up a lot of chances for that offense. So Nebraska's defense, get turnovers, get Rayola the ball, find Isaiah Nair, win the game. That's how you do it. Circling around to picks for this game, I'll kind of give mine first since, Cole, you went first last time. I'm picking Nebraska, and I'm actually going to stick with very similar to our simulation. I'll give you that. Nebraska wins this one by a score of 38-28. I actually have Nebraska covering the spread in this game. I think that they're just going to be too much. I think that they're pretty physical in the second year of Matt Rule, and I think that they have what it takes to take down Dion here. Jeff, Cole, whoever wants to jump in here with your pick next, go for it, and let's hear who you got.
Hey, yeah, so I'll take this part here. So Colorado and Nebraska are both coming in at 1-0, but they both obviously have very similar strengths and weaknesses. When you look at Colorado, you look at their high-flying passing offense. I know you mentioned last week, Shedeur Sanders put up over 504 yards of offense passing, but notice that they had some struggle with their running defense. I have that they struggled to stop the opposing team, UTEP, with the running of the ball. Meanwhile, when you look at Nebraska, you could see that they showcased a little bit of a balanced offense and defense, which only gave up 7 points and 56 yards rushing. Because I know Colorado is more of that flashy offense, Nebraska being a little more balanced attack, I give the slight advantage to Nebraska and their offense. I agree with you about the spread. I think Nebraska does cover. I think that Nebraska's solid defense and the offense are going to overcome Colorado's defense. Yeah. And I really think that they do cover this game. I have it at 31-20 Nebraska.
All right. Cole, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I think that balance of the Nebraska offense is really what kind of buoys this whole performance. I think they got Rayola out there against UTEP and kind of let him rip to let him get comfortable in the college game, let him get his first sights of it against a inferior opponent. But I think they're going to kind of reel it back in this week, right? Because I think, and you made a really good point. This offense for Colorado is explosive. So the last thing you want to do is turn the ball over and give them a short field because they can score and they can score quick. So you don't want to get in a shootout or a game where you get down early and then you force all of that responsibility onto Rayola. So I think that Nebraska is going to utilize the run, something that Colorado struggled with against a North Dakota State team that has had one of the best offensive lines in the FCS for the last 15 years. Nebraska's line is a physical beast like they are. So they're going to use that running game. They're going to play off that play action pass. And I think they're going to ride that to a win as well. I don't have it quite as big of a margin as you guys do, but I'm looking at a 34-27 type of win for the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, it was tough to play with that margin, 7.5, but I just once I saw it on the simulation, I was like, maybe I'll have to tempt with that one just a little bit. So across the board, we all have Nebraska taking down Colorado. We're going to go to the last marquee matchup of the weekend. We have Iowa State against Iowa in Kinnick. So, guys, all right. Sets the stage for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. It's a rivalry, regional significance, obviously. Battle for the state of Iowa. Cole, what do you think about this matchup? And what should we watch out for?
This is one of those games that I always have found interesting for whatever reason, just because it happens so early into the season, right? It's always this first quarter of the season. I think it's almost always the second week of the season for both of these teams. And so it's always one that I just kind of naturally am drawn to because I love trophy rivalries. You mentioned the Cy-Hawk Trophy, and that was, I had never really looked into that. And so looking up this matchup, I kind of found some footnotes about it. And so, you talk about this rivalry, and it dates back to 1894, but the trophy itself wasn't created until 1976. So when you look at all of the trophies that are in the Big Ten, it's still a relatively new one. And that's pretty cool. And it's been changed and advanced as the times have gone on. I believe that I read that the last time it was kind of updated was 2010, 2011 to what its current format looks like. And, unlike many rivalries across the country, this has never been played in a location other than Iowa City or Ames. It's always alternated between those two respective campuses. So I think that's another pretty cool fact about this rivalry, and just kind of shows this, like you talked about, this very regional, just natural, headbutt that happens between these two programs and their proximity. Tossing it back to last year's matchup, Iowa, for as bad as they were on offense, actually were able to put 20 points on the board. They ended up winning this 20-13. It wasn't that close. They had a 17-point lead to start the fourth before a late Iowa State touchdown and field goal kind of made it look a little better than what it actually was. But Iowa's offense looked really, we're going to go different in the first week in 2024. So I think getting rid of their offensive coordinator and getting McNamara back might end up being a little bit bigger of a deal than some people thought it was.
Yeah, the offense definitely lived up to what our expectations have hoped for it in week one. Hopefully they can continue that in week two. Looking at that Iowa defense a little bit more, it started up right where they left off last season. And I don't think the Hawkeyes need to be game wreckers on the defensive front, at least in this matchup. I think just stall enough drives for their offense to score, and that'll work out pretty well. Last week, Iowa State's offense lost the possession battle 28 minutes to 38 minutes to their opponent. Iowa can use that on defense to play keep away with the Cyclones and kind of control that tempo in this game in favor of the Hawkeyes. But then looking over on the Cyclones defense, Iowa State on defense last week didn't allow North Dakota to do much vertically to move the ball down the field. They kind of kept them side to side, east to west. The Cyclones use their swarming defense to keep offenses in front of them, and they try to create a lot of those, as Cole put before for like Penn State, those dink and dunk style play calling. The Hawkeyes are not going to be able to run the ball as efficiently as they did against Illinois State last week. And so it's going to be a tough challenge for Iowa getting the ball over the top and beating that defense deep. So that passing game might not be able to show in the exact same fashion it did last week either. An X factor I'm keying again on that defense for Iowa. I think defensive lineman Aaron Graves is a name to watch for. Graves had 4 solo tackles, 3 sacks in week 1. He's 6'4", 300 pounds. He's a junior, born and raised in Iowa. He's going to be looking to disrupt Rocco Beck's rhythm and kind of continue dominating that Cyclone run game, which they only averaged 3.9 yards per carry last week against North Dakota. So offensively, I'm not sure Iowa State has quite the effectiveness that Iowa has, and I think that the brute force on the defensive front might make or break this one. Any other keys to victory we should look at here, guys, before we make our picks here? If not,
yeah, I wanted to jump in real quick. I really like how you mentioned a lot of Iowa State's, a lot of their key factors from last week against their team. I wanted to make a couple of cases. Yeah, I want to make a couple of cases for Iowa. First of all, did you guys notice that Kirk Ferentz wasn't actually at the game? He was suspended.
Yeah.
You guys find that kind of strange that the game that he's not there, the offense decides to perk up. Everybody's talking more about the offense than the defense. Again, the defense, as always, they looked fantastic. But that was just something that I noticed. They were really keen on that offensive coordinator. I tuned in a little bit towards the end because, got other games I'm watching. But I just thought that was really interesting. But I'll let you guys say what you want to say, and then I'll just kind of point a few things before I make my pick.
Well, kind of going off of your point there, I think as we move here to our predictions, I kind of took those things in mind, and I don't think we see nearly as much Iowa offense this week as we saw last week. I think that kind of like I talked about with Michigan, surpassing that 20-point mark is going to be pretty difficult, and the opponent only gets tougher from here on out. So I guess shifting to our final picks, Cole, I'll circle back to you. If you pick between these two teams, who do you think wins here and why?
Yeah, I got to go with the Hawkeyes here to build on this streak and make it 2 years in a row. I agree with you. I don't think the offense is going to look nearly as explosive as it did against Illinois State, but that defense is certified top 8 in the country, and I don't see anything from Iowa State's offense that really scares me, I guess is how I would put it. So I think it's going to be a little bit uglier. So if there are Hawkeye fans out there that thought that they were going to end up maybe inside the top 30 in terms of total offense and scoring offense this year, you might want to pump the brakes because it's probably not happening, this week. But I think at the end of the day, Iowa's defense has plenty of firepower to keep the Hawkeyes in check, and I think the offense will get just enough for what they need to get this done. I think that line at 2.5 is awfully low. I'll talk about it later in the episode, but I'm actually going to take the Hawkeyes probably in the area of like 18-13.
That's fair. I truthfully, I think I'm right in that same boat. When we talked about Michigan and Texas being a rock fight, this is going to be like a literal boulder battle. And I'm not talking about Colorado and Boulder. I'm talking about literal limestone being thrown back and forth. Like, we're not talking football right now. So I am also picking Iowa. I agree. I think that 2.5, they want you to look at Iowa State's way, but I just don't see it here. I don't think that it works out that way. I've got Iowa hitting that 20-point mark on the dot, and I see them winning this one 20-16 over the Cyclones. The model coming in favor again as well, picking Iowa over Iowa State. Jeff, I'll turn to you. Who do you have, Iowa or Iowa State?
So I'm going to go with Iowa, obviously, but I'm going to throw a little wild card in there. I'm going to say that the offense remembers the way they felt last week, putting up that 40 points in their last game, feeling confident. Sure, it was against a lower tiered opponent, but considering the fact that the defense they're humming, they're ranked 4th in the nation for points allowed. Iowa State's defense is good, but they're really not as strong. I noted here that they were allowing more rushing yards at ranking lower in total offense allowed. So I'm going to say that Iowa should win this pretty comfortably. You can joke and laugh at me later, but I'm going to say Iowa wins 34-10. I think this line is ridiculous. I think Iowa's going to come out. Just watch. I think McNamara is going to figure it out. It'll be interesting. But again, next week, you come back, you guys can tell me otherwise. But I guess you're going to call me the Wild Badger this week because I'm going to try to hit the home run just like I'm trying to hit these bets. So 34-10 Iowa. Go Hawks.
Oh, that is so TikTok worthy. That is going to get attention across social media. I love it. Love the pick. That is certainly unexpected.
Gotta get those people watching.
So we're going to kind of, like we did last week, move into the remaining picks for the Big Ten, bringing up the big board here with those picks. The first one on our list, and I apologize if it looks like we're all rambling the same picks, but guys, this is week 2. All right. Don't expect this all season. That's not happening. Sorry. First one we have on the list, Western Illinois versus Indiana. I'll kind of start us off. Western Illinois' defense was non-existent against Northern Illinois. So I think Curtis Rourke should be able to have his way with these guys this week. I'm taking Indiana here. Cole, how about you? Western Illinois or Indiana?
Yeah, I'm sticking with the Hoosiers on this one. I know the model didn't pick a whole lot of wins for them, but this is the ones that it felt pretty comfortably about, and I agree.
Yep, and like you said, the model takes Indiana. Jeff, Indiana or Western Illinois?
I'm not going to get crazy here. Going to stick with Indiana. I think they should be able to come out, roll, and, continue on their way. Defense is really going to step up for them.
Next one, we have Duke at Northwestern. Let's talk about getting a little crazy here. Cole, I'll have you go first. Who you got in this one?
Well, I picked Northwestern to get upset last week, and it didn't work out. So, well, I guess you have me as Northwestern, but I'm actually going to take the upset in this one. I'm going to take Duke. I think, yeah, I switched that a little later on you, and I apologize for that and to everybody viewing it. A little snafu on our end, but yeah, I think while Northwestern won, it still was kind of ugly, and I just think that they're still just kind of trotting their way through finding their identity and missing those guys on the back end in the secondary, and I think Duke is kind of able to take advantage of that and steal one from them.
And I'll add, all jokes aside, the lacrosse field was a pretty beautiful setting to watch college football last weekend. If you saw it on TV, there were way more seats than I expected. The view of Lake Michigan is amazing. So let's rethink that. And if you haven't seen it, go look at it, Google it, whatever you need to do. It makes me want to go watch a football game. Now, there's not much of an home field advantage from it, but damn, it's a nice look, especially in the early parts of September, maybe even as you get up to October. But I didn't give Northwestern a lot of edge last week in that matchup against Miami, Ohio, and it really showed. I mean, we're talking small margin victory. I'm not quite sold on the Wildcats being able to grit this one out. And I think that Malik Murphy is a special talent. I've always had him really high in terms of up-and-coming quarterbacks. Give me the Blue Devils in this one, similar to Cole. Pardon my mishap there. Picks happen rapid fire here, people. And the model as well, taking Duke. Jeff, are you going to cap off our perfect pick here, or are you taking Northwestern?
Hey, you know what? I'm going to stick with you guys. I'm going Duke. Defenses were solid last week. Duke was only giving up 3 points. Their offense was fairly balanced. Through their rushing game, had a little bit of issues. Other side of the ball, we have Northwestern's defense. Their offense really struggled with those turnovers, only scoring 13 points. I'm going to give it to Duke's strong defense, more balanced offense. I think they have the advantage here. I think Duke wins this game.
And I'll flip it back to you, Jeff, here in a second. The next one on our list, our alma mater, Bowling Green, taking on Penn State, because, the MAC and the Big Ten are so cohesive in the early parts of the season. I think there's maybe 3 or 4 MAC Big Ten games this week. Who do you pick here, Jeff? BGSU or Penn State?
Oh, man, if you would pick me first, the BG alumni. In my heart, I'd love to pick Bowling Green for this upset. I've played this matchup in NCAA 25. I've tried every whatsoever, but it always ends the same way. I load in with my quarterback. I get ready to take the field, and all you hear is the Mo Bamba in the background. Oh, yeah. I don't see it happening. You'll find out later in my picks for my underdog pick'ems. I just think that Penn State has too much here. They proved me wrong last week. I'm sorry, Penn State fans. I think I'm going to blame it on the weather, but at the same time, Penn State was fairly impressive last week. God, geez. I'm going to have to go 38-10 in favor of Penn State. Breaks my heart. Falcons, you got to prove me wrong, but got to go with my brain here.
All right, Cole. Penn State, BGSU. Are you flipping on us, or are you sticking straight?
No, I'm going to stick with you guys. I agree with Jeff. It was a very impressive outing against West Virginia in week 1 for Penn State. And as much as I love some action, there's just a gap in talent level that Bowling Green is just not going to be able to overcome. But hey, it was a really cool 100-yard kickoff to start their season, right?
Yeah, they opened the season with the kick six, and they had a really great week 1 overall, Bowling Green. They ran the ball well, especially. Penn State, though, very balanced and methodical against West Virginia. I think Bowling Green represents the MAC well in this matchup, but I don't think it's nearly enough to take down a team like Penn State at home. I'm going to say something crazy, and this will probably backfire. It's probably not even going to be close to right, but I'm actually going to say Bowling Green covers. Maybe not as crazy as we think, but 34.5 is really high. And I think Bowling Green's supposed to be the best offense in the MAC. So take them as a chance to cover here.
I hope you're right. I don't believe you, but it'd be fun to watch.
The model also picks Penn State, by the way, as we move to the next game, Rhode Island versus Minnesota. I have Minnesota here. Rhode Island presents a unique challenge with playmaking quarterback Devin Farrell, but they were highly undisciplined in week 1. They caused several turnovers. They had numerous penalties. I mean, like 10 plus penalties for an average of 10 yards. It was awful for Rhode Island week 1. Big bounce back here for the Gophers. They barely lost that one in dramatic fashion last week. I think they take care of business and they win a pretty big one here. Cole, what about you?
Yeah, for as much as Minnesota liked to piss me off last week, and make us look dumb by missing 2 field goals, including the game winner. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to lean on the Gophers to win this one.
The model coming in with Minnesota also. Jeff, Minnesota, Rhode Island.
I'm going to go Minnesota. That was another one of those bloopers I meant to mention at the beginning. That game-winning field goal where Minnesota went up and missed it, but the fans were already cheering. The fireworks were blaring. Boy, what a on their end. I have Minnesota 42-7.
Akron at Rutgers here. Cole, your favorite team ever, Akron. Do they take down Rutgers?
It was screw the Roo last week and screw the Roo this week. As much as Rutgers, although they won, also cost me some money. It was a bad weekend overall. Thursday night, we arrived at the bachelor party, and it turns out that about 7 of us had all taken the over at 51.5. So did you know you don't have to kick the extra point if you score at the end of the game? We all found that out the hard way and then wanted to hang ourselves right after that game was over. So I am going to take Rutgers, though, even though they have hurt me deeply.
Vegas giveth and Vegas taketh awayeth. And I'm mistaken. Isn't that R there on your pick? Isn't that for Rue? You're taking Akron, right? No, maybe not. Okay, well, moving on. I am also taking Akron. Not Akron. Scratch that.
Oh, you heard him. You heard him say that.
No pick for Akron here. Reverse it. Take it back. We'll do it live. Repick. We'll do it live. No, I'm taking Rutgers. Cole, you were actually dead on, though, last week when you were saying that there were going to be a heavy run game from Rutgers. I'm sticking with my stance, though, from last week. Just flip it to this week. I think Calic Manis needs to have a show-me game before they get to Virginia Tech. Ohio State threw for over 200 on the Zips last week. I think that's the benchmark for Rutgers as well. You have to put up passing yards, and you have to show what that passing game can really do before you get too far down the line. The model as well, taking Rutgers. Jeff, are you Rutgers?
Yeah, I'm going to go Rutgers. You know, watching that game with Akron last week with Ohio State, that first half, I don't know if it was just Ohio State just trying to piss everybody off or secretly trying to screw Cole over with the spread, which I did mention that spread might be a little high, but I think the Rutgers should win this game comfortably. Those Akron quarterbacks, they took a big pummeling last week. Do we know the status of those guys playing this week? I mean, they got pretty beat up against Ohio State's, D line, their secondary. It seemed like every 5 minutes they were taking one guy out, putting another guy in. It was the Chinese fire drill out there.
Yeah, I think Finley at one point you saw him looking at the coach and just saying, "Nah, I'm done." And that's a former Cal Bear right there. He's played Power 4, Power 5 level before, and he was just taking a beating. Moving to our first Big Ten conference game matchup, gentlemen. Michigan State at Maryland. Cole, who do you got here?
Listen, Spartans had a lot of good things to be proud of in their win. Nice way to start off the Jonathan Smith era, like we talked about. But I'm still very much high on this Maryland team and what they're going to be able to do the rest of the season, as is Big Bear. So I'm continuing that. I think they start Big Ten play 1-0.
Yeah, I mean, made strides, Michigan State, from the prior year, but Aiden Childs did not even throw a passing touchdown. I think that's a key for concern a little bit. I knew he was going to struggle early, but I thought he was going to figure it out. And it just feels like things got from ugly to uglier as that game went on against Florida Atlantic. They barely outpaced the Owls in yardage, and they accumulated 12 penalties for 140 yards. So I'm just going to flip around there with that spread of 8 for Maryland. Take Maryland to cover in this one. Jeff, Maryland or Michigan State?
No, I agree with you. I'm going to take Maryland. Too much firepower. Michigan State's defense had a couple of solid moments, but I just don't think they can keep up with Maryland. Maryland's in it right now. I say they cover 34-24. Maryland takes it.
We're winding down the last half of our Big Ten picks here. We have Eastern Michigan, another MAC school, taking on the Washington Huskies. I have Washington here. I think they had a slow start in the first quarter last week, but they turned it into a healthy diet of offense for Washington. Eastern Michigan is going to have more trouble throwing the ball on the Huskies than they did against UMass, and that's not the same. So take Washington here for me. Jeff, what about you? Washington or Eastern Michigan?
Is that even a question? We're going to go Washington. It's going to be they're going to win comfortably. Yeah, I'm ready for these actual Big Ten games to start. I think, you got to give it up to these MAC teams that are willing to put their bodies out there, collect the paycheck like those Kent State teams of past years. But right now this week, got to give it to Washington. Too much. I have it by double digits, 42-17.
Cole, Washington?
Hey, now, Kent State does what we have to get that bread. All right? Don't worry about it. Look the other way. No, I'm taking Washington. Again, I know the model doesn't like a lot of these matchups with Washington, but this is one that it feels pretty confident in, and so do I.
I think we all kind of feel similarly with South Dakota and Wisconsin. Wasn't always pretty for Wisconsin last week, but to kind of cut this one short, the model, Cole, myself, Jeff, we're all taking Wisconsin here. We think that's a solid matchup for the Badgers to move on with. Kansas at Illinois. Now, hold up here. I'm going to use my 2-point upset pick for the week here. I'm going with Illinois as an upset over Kansas. And some of you are probably shocked when you hear that because Walk-On Red Shirts and us here at First and Goal have been high on Kansas for the last several years. We like Lance Leipold. We think what they're doing is great. Here's why I think it's my upset pick. I'm taking the Illinois Fighting Illini. Gosh, I can't speak again. Both these teams were pretty impressive last week. Illinois only allowed 49 yards rushing, and they pitched a shutout. If you think about being able to contain Kansas's quarterback and not allow him to scramble out of the pocket, that takes away at least a certain facet of Kansas's offensive attack. And I think that might be the big difference here. I think Illinois gets a big home victory on Saturday. So I take Illinois. Cole, what about you? Kansas or Illinois?
Listen, I respect you taking the upset pick, but I just don't see it. I think Illinois has a strong defense, but I think Kansas offense is extremely explosive. They showed that in week 1, and I think that's going to continue to roll in Champaign.
The model is with you, taking Kansas as well. Jeff, be the tiebreaker here or the tie maker here.
Hey, you know what?
Illinois or Kansas?
Sure. Yeah, you know what? As I was putting in this pick, even before I saw the model was going Kansas. And you know what I said to the model? I said, fuck the model. Excuse my language. I am going with Illinois this week, and I'm going to tell you why. I think Illinois is going to have that strong defensive play that's going to absolutely disrupt this game. I think Illinois is going to be able to control the clock. They're going to minimize the turnovers, and I think special teams are going to have to make a step up this week. I think Illinois is going to be able to beat this Kansas team. But then again, that's college football. You never really know what to expect. So I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid, and I'm going to join you with Illinois.
Love it. We'll switch over to your Buckeyes, whichever one of you two want to go first. If you want to just do the OHIO, we'll save fans the need to hear us speak. Who you got here, guys?
Yeah, listen, first time the Western Michigans come to the Horseshoe since 2015, and much like that year, they're going against a vaunted, talented Ohio State team. I anticipate the Buckeyes come out a little bit quicker, have a little more rhythm to themselves, and I know Jeff's going to is going to talk about it, but I agree with him. I think they cover the spread on this one.
I agree with you, Cole. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's just too much offense. Please, Ohio State, please start strong. We can't have another first half the way that looked last week. I kept texting my other buddies. It was constant. Oh my gosh, is Howard going to be the guy? Oh my gosh, how long before Ryan Day loses his job? Just start strong. Go Bucks, please. Control the line of scrimmage. Get these
that,
points.
Ladies and gentlemen, is why you don't put your mortgage on a bet.
As the episode of this podcast perfectly displays, hype train derailments and week 1 overreactions come to fruition here at First and Goal. Our last 2 games on the docket, my heartache and my heartburn, Boise State and Oregon. Last week, I ate potatoes, gave me heartburn, took my Tums, hoping that doesn't have a repeat with its brother sisters from the south of Boise. I'm picking Oregon, right? I mean, big bounce back game, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, less out of confidence, more out of sheer pleading. Like the Ducks can't afford 2 tight games back to back to open a season when that schedule gets even worse. What do you guys think?
I think the Ducks come out and get back on track, and much like LeGarrette Blunt punch Boise State in the face.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cole, and I agree with you, Tyler. I think Oregon gets it together. I think they take down the Blue Potatoes this week. I think there shouldn't be any issue here.
I think if you're eating blue potatoes, that's the real issue here. Please, no one at home. If you have blue potatoes, please call like the FDA, the CDC, something, because there's something wrong going on there. Last game on the pick'em, Utah State at USC. USC with the big win last week. I think it continues. This is a great week for them to get healthy and recover from that grueling game. I'm taking USC here. I think they moved to 2-0. Cole, are you with me here, USC?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier in the episode that I would consider or start to kind of get on that USC playoff contender if they walked out of Ann Arbor 3-0. Well, you got to be 2-0 to be 3-0, right? So USC, takes it to Utah State and gets ready for that matchup with Michigan.
Model sticks with us here, USC. Jeff, cap us off. USC, what do you think that score is?
Yeah, I'm going with USC as well. Offense, everything looked really strong last week. Proved me wrong when I was going with the Tigers. Well, I tried to stay up that game that night. Woke up to some very upset bets the next day, so I got to go USC. I think that they're able to handle Utah State's defense without any issues this week.
All right, guys. Last part of Goal Line Stand for week 2. We're going to give our prop bet picks. These are the 3-pointers. These have to hit, go over, whatever, go under. Has to be at these benchmarks in order to get 3 points, or 25% of that to get 2 points. Cole, go first. Who do you have as your prop bet?
I have Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. Again, you talked about, me kind of previewing that game last week and how much that I thought the run game was going to be a part of it. And it was, right? 19 carries, 165 yards, and a touchdown. So my prop bet is that they're going to keep feeding Monangai this week against a very banged up Akron team. And I think he goes over 120 yards rushing again.
I'm going with Dylan Raiola, quarterback, freshman from Nebraska, playing against Colorado. Nebraska as a team put up about 284 yards of passing offense in week 1. I have Dylan Raiola playing the majority of this game, if not the whole game, and I have him surpassing 250 yards passing on his own. So give me Dylan Raiola over 250 yards passing. Jeff, let's go to you. What do you have as your prop bet?
Sure. So I'm going back to the Michigan and Texas game. I'm going with Jaden Blue. I'm going to go under 66 yards rushing. I just feel like Michigan's number one priority is going to be able to stop that ball. It's going to be Texas having to throw the ball majority of the game. I think that even if Michigan takes a lead, at some point, Texas is going to try to come right back. It's going to be one of those high-power Ewer games. So I'm going to say Jaden Blue under 66 rushing yards.
And then lastly, the model picked Isaiah Nair, if you remember from earlier in the episode, the wide receiver for Nebraska, at 2+ touchdowns receiving against Colorado. So expect him to have a big game in that one. I know we don't have it up here on the screen, guys, but let's move to the goal line picks. These are the 4-pointers. These have to hit in order for us to get 4 points in this week's pick 'em. I'll start off with mine. I have the Ohio State defense holding Western Michigan to less than 200 yards total. That's my pick for goal line in order to get 4 points. Cole, I'll turn to you. What is your goal line pick for week 2?
I spoke on it earlier in the episode when we discussed the Iowa State game. I'm going with the Iowa spread. I'm actually going to go 4.5 in favor of the Hawkeyes. So I'm going even further than that 2.5. Again, I picked it like that 18-13 game, but I just see that 2.5 being way too low. And I think the Hawkeyes get it done by almost double that.
Love that. The model has the Michigan offense for its goal line pick scoring less than 20 points. Now, we talked about that being a rock fight. It has that Michigan offense failing to get 3 touchdowns. So keep that one in mind as we look to that primary matchup at noon on Saturday. Jeff, cap us off with the goal line pick of yours for week 2.
Sure. I'm going to Columbus. I'm hoping I don't regret when I say this. I'm going to say Ohio State covers that spread. On FanDuel, they have it at 37.5. On DraftKings, they have it as the 38 point spread. Who knows what's going to happen from now until Saturday, if it bumps up, bumps down. I listening to Chip Kelly's post conference about how disappointed he was with his offense. Tyler knows how much of a Chip Kelly offense can be. That man is an offensive genius. I think the critics, they have to be shut up this week. I'm going to say Ohio State starts strong. Hopefully doesn't start teetering, play down to their competition. I'm going to say they cover the spread at 37.5. 38 points. I think that should feel a lot more comfortable for us bettors here for Ohio State this week.
Love that. Guys, to cap off the show for you underdog fantasy fans there at home, Badger's going to give his picks for fantasy draft here in college football world. For week 2, Jeff, who do you have as our underdog fantasy picks? And before I get to that part, what I want to say, if you are not currently on Underdog Fantasy, you can join using the Walk On Red Shirts code. Use code WALKON, WALKON. You can get up to $1,000 in bonus deposit on your first deposit, and you get to claim a special pick when you sign up. So again, use code WALKON, WALKON, when you sign up. So Jeff, I'll turn to you. Who are you picking this week?
Sure. So we're going to start with quarterback. We're going to go with Quinn Ewers of Texas versus Michigan. Texas has a potent passing offense led by Quinn Ewers, who has shown the ability to exploit opposing defenses. His arm strength and accuracy make him a significant threat through the air. Michigan secondary, while talented, faced some issues in week 1 and could be susceptible to Quinn Ewers' deep throws and precision passes. If Michigan continues to struggle, Ewers could find some consistent wide receivers open. Again, offensive battle. I think it's going to be a lot of passing in Ann Arbor. So I'm going with Quinn Ewers as my quarterback for the week. Turning to Penn State, going back to my love for Bowling Green. Well, I know that Bowling Green could be a good MAC team versus MAC opponents. Not so much against Big Ten teams. I'm going to say Nicholas Singleton is a top pick here against Bowling Green. Their defense might be able to struggle with stopping him early. I think the only way Singleton doesn't get his yards is if Penn State goes up big and they bring in their backups. I think that they're going to start fresh. They're going to ground and pound. I think Singleton at least goes over 100 yards in this game. Turning to the other game, with Nebraska, with Isaiah Nayers. He has a big play threat with speed and athleticism. He has the capability to rack up yards quickly. Just because you're guarded by Travis Hunter doesn't mean you won't get any looks. Dylan Raiola will want his target early and often. So I am going to go Isaiah Nayers for this week for wide receiver. And finally, going to Oregon here. Got to give the Ducks some love here. Going with their tight end, Terrence Ferguson. Reliable red zone target for Oregon. Has the hands and the size, ability to make plays in the red zone. If the defense is focusing on other guys, I think Oregon's going to have to feed their tight end, especially in the red zone. Oregon's got to make a statement. I'm going to say that Ferguson would be a great play for you this week. Again, as always, please make sure you play responsibly. And remember, have fun. Again, we're just guys. We're trying to have fun. We're trying to make picks and trying to win you guys some money and, have you guys enjoy a little bit of football along the way. So thanks, guys.
Well said. Week 2 preview comes to an end, guys. College football is back in full swing. We have games on Friday, Saturday. No more Saturday, no more Monday. No more Sunday, no more Monday. Just Friday, Saturday, maybe a Thursday now and then if you're really into NFL football. But again, one last plead. Follow, like, subscribe us on any of our channels. And remember that challenge. If you got friends and family that like Big Ten football as much as you do, as much as we do, share the show and let's grow these Goal Line Guardians to new heights. As always, this has been First and Goal. We're your hosts, Big Bear T, Curtin Guy. We got the Badger back again for week 2. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week.